Or greetings, Earthlings, as a fantastic YouTuber once said. This is Jordan here. This is Jordan from NZ Audio Editors. And I'll just say Jordan one more time. This week, you guys asked me questions last week. That's real confusing. And I'm going to answer one of them this week. So I had two questions from Deborah and from Gemma. Thanks, guys. You're awesome. Helping me out with answering the questions that you have the burning desire that need answering. So you asked me about interviewing. All right, so you're a podcast, you run a podcast, you're the person who's interviewing people all the time. You want to work on your game, okay? You want to be better, you want to be the best version of an interviewer that you can be. What are some tips for helping you be that best version of yourself? So I'm going to run through some of those. Without further ado, let's get it done. First one is prepare your guest, okay? So we're in the lead up to the actual show. When you prepare your guest, they're more relaxed, they're in a better position to be great, and you're actually in a better position to be great and not say those filler words and not do the things that you don't want to do because you know that they're prepared, and if they're prepared, it means you were prepared in advance. For example, if you have scripted questions, then let them know what they are. But what I would say about that is encourage people not to be meticulous about planning their answers. You want them to be genuine. You want them to come from a place that actually means something rather than feeling like they were really well scripted as were the questions. Okay, so just be careful in that space with whether you use scripted questions and the encouragement of not going over them too meticulously before they come on the show. And inquire about any time restraints they have. So that's another thing. It's like, man, like I've got this on my mind. I've got a meeting, 30 minutes after I'm supposed to be on the Zoom call or whatever it is, doing the podcast. Make sure that you let people know that it might run a little bit over time. Make sure that people don't feel stressed about a time pressure on the back end of doing your recording because it's distracting. Like anything, and we all get this, we all know this, it's really hard to be present if you've got something else on your mind. You want people to be 100% with you in the room in that moment, okay? Avoid yes-no questions. So you know what those are? A simple answer, a yes or a no. There's no flow on. Leave them open-ended. Ask open-ended questions. Avoid asking questions that seek a desired answer. All right, so like questions with, what's the word? Agenda. Avoid those questions. And ask questions one at a time. All right? If you do all of those things, then the chances are that some of the things that you may have bad habits of doing don't necessarily happen because they're answering the questions that are being well structured. You're coming back with equally well structured and thought out responses. You know what you're saying. They know what they're talking about. There's less ums, there's less ahs. There's less awkwardness. Sometimes silence is great. Sometimes it's awkward. We all know those ones. Make the guest feel comfortable before you hit go. So when they come into the office, when you see them on Zoom, if you don't know them, say, hey, say, how's it going? Say, how's your cat? Ask some questions about whatever. What do they like having for breakfast? Make them feel comfortable, but don't wait around so long after they feel comfortable, okay? So there's a lot of what I see when I record people is there's a lot of great content that comes from before you press record. Okay, so get into it, make them comfortable, and then let's get this party started. We're all pretty time poor these days as well, so that's another reason to just crack on with it. Next tip is moving on from, okay, well, now they're really well prepared. How do you behave when you're interviewing them? My biggest advice here is active listen, okay? Engage non-verbally because silence is really powerful. So what I mean by actively listening is it's up to you in that moment to be present. You're the one who set the time, for example. If you're feeling time pressure, why did you create that for yourself? Why did you put yourself under that pressure? Now you're not necessarily, you might be 80% present, but there's 20% of you that misses a key point of what the other person said, and your follow-up answer is difficult or not well thought out or doesn't represent you the way that you wanted to because you're 20% not there. Whatever it is. Look, we can't always be 100% present. Sometimes we've got things going on with the kids or with our partners or whatever it might be, but do your best to all the things that you can control to make sure that you're present within that moment rather than thinking about those things, which gives you an opportunity to actively listen. And when you actively listen, good things happen. When I talk about nonverbal engagement, it's none of the, yes, Those kind of sounds are actually quite distracting for the listener. And silence is super powerful when somebody's making a point. The best podcasts that I listen to, there's none of that filler, acknowledgement, agreement, disagreement, those kind of sounds from the other person that might creep into normal conversation. They're purely listening. And when there's an opportunity to interrupt or to speak, the guest feels really well heard, and you know that you've heard them because you were actively listening and weren't worrying about, making noises because you feel like you need to make agreement sounds. Okay, that would be one of my biggest things. Is I find silence from the interviewer much more powerful than lots of the little filler words that almost distract somebody's flow when they're in a rhythm of what they're talking about. Use eye contact, shake your head, nod, smile, do all those things so that the person on the opposite side who you've asked the question feels heard, because that's all that matters. It doesn't matter that what you say. Nothing you say is going to make them feel more heard or more present or more in the moment. If you're actively holding eye contact, listening, not like awkward holding eye contact for so long like this, that's intimidating, and that makes me not feel very comfortable about answering the question and being present and all that sort of stuff. So use eye contact, use head nods, use head shakes. Use those things that the listener doesn't hear, but the person being interviewed goes, yeah, boom, okay, I'm being heard. And the only thing they want to be is heard by you in that moment, all right? Interrupt when it makes sense, or if you think your audience may not understand what the person said. Otherwise, let them talk. I'm on this podcast, right? My only job is to blow this horn. It's like a party popper thing. That's what happens when I don't know what they are talking about, because I'm just the producer Jordan in the background, the good talkers. Shout out to that podcast. So I blow the horn when I think the listeners might not know what's been said, where it's too jargony. Okay, that's my very obnoxious way of interrupting, but it works pretty well in that case. It's up to you to kind of step in and say, oh, hey, can you elaborate on that or talk a bit more about that when you think potentially your listeners might not know what the meaning is or whatever it might be. Otherwise, let them talk, don't interrupt. So interrupt when you need to, and when you feel it's important or the right opportunity, or when it's clearly your time to speak again, ask another question, but otherwise let them talk. Laugh when it's genuine, not because you think you should. So this is one of those things, Deborah asked me about this, laughter and wanting to laugh on the podcast. And look, it's perfectly fine, no problems at all, as long as it's genuine. And if it's not genuine, the person will feel that it's not genuine, and you might be laughing because it fills you up. It's got nothing to do with them. You feel obliged. You feel awkward if you don't laugh, those sort of things. So I think the product's worse off if you laugh and it's not genuine. Above all else, stay present and allow yourself to explore things off the script. So if you go, my mind's taking me into this interesting space, you can follow up with your interruption or whatever it might be and explore things that weren't necessarily what you thought you were going to talk about, and sometimes the best content will come from there. Not always, and everyone's a little bit different. Some people need to be really well planned out and organized. I find if you're reading your answers out or you're like, oh, wow, that was really interesting. Next question from the list, rather than, again, being ready to allow your mind to take the conversation in a different direction. And just above all else, remember, if it goes wrong with podcasts, they're not generally live. Sometimes they are, but generally they're not. If you hate all of it, just cut it out, right? If you hate the question or your mind goes, ooh, over here, and you just take it in a weird place and it gets all freaky, then just cut it out. Doesn't even matter, right? That's it from me. Bye for now. I'll see you next week. Hey, if you've got questions about audiovisual, please let me know, man. I just love doing these videos, and I love answering questions that my audience have questions about, okay? I love answering my audience's questions. There we go. You guys be good and have a happy week, or do your very best. I wish you for a happy week. And if you need help with anything audiovisual related, get in touch with me. I've got a new website. I'll tell you about that in not another week. Okie dokie dokie dokie. Bye.